All right, welcome. We are starting to learn how to graph when an equation is standard form, a quadratic is in standard form. So I want to talk about what standard form kind of looks like. So I kind of have some terms here. Okay, standard form is that y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Sorry about that extra y there. That y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Remember, a quadratic means it has that x squared in the problem. All right, so everything will have an x squared in it. So we're going to find or help change it to finding the vertex. And we need to know this formula because the vertex is the tip of the graph. So this formula right here, opposite of b over 2a, notice we had a, b, c in the formula. And that will find x, but to find our y, we have to take that number and plug it into our equation. So we'll be practicing that, but I want to go over a little bit more of the term. Remember, a minimum looks like this, and the vertex is here. That is the lowest value. If you look at an equation, you'll be able to tell, and a will be positive. So that number attached to a squared, or x squared, will be positive. That's how you know it'll be a u, or a minimum. You know it'll be a maximum whenever a is negative, or it's a flipped u. There's the vertex there. There's the top of the graph. So we're either going to have a u or a flipped u for our answers here. Again, pause anytime you need to go through this stuff. Okay, so first things first, I know it might seem simple, but it'll be helpful. We want to list off what's our A, what's our B, and what's our C. Now it's just going to be the numbers attached, not including the letter. So we have our A value here that's attached to x squared. So it's just 5. B, we got to remember to use the sign too with this, okay? Got to remember to use the sign on that. Just trying to get a little bit more room. Not sure why it's not erasing, but I guess we'll go with this. So it'll be negative 20, and C is 3. So I just looked at our formula, because I had x squared, x in a number. We know a standard form, and I went with that. Okay, so let's use that formula. So x equals the opposite of b. Remember, our b value was negative 20. So we want to take the opposite of that. So positive 20 divided by 2 times our a value. So 5. So in your calculator, that's what you would type. And so we get a 2. Now that gives us 2 things. That gives us the first number of our vertex. It also gives us our axis symmetry. X equals 2. I should have gone back. Whenever I had that 5 that I highlighted before, that's a positive 5. So I have a minimum. We still need to find that y value. So we take that x, and we're going to plug it in here. So it's going to be 5. 2 squared, subtraction sign 20 times 2 plus 3. Type all of that in your calculator at once. Don't do parts. Type it all. And our answer is negative 17. So eventually we'll be able to graph all of that after we find all of that information. So let's try another one. So first off, I want you to pause and list off the ABCs. So to help you out, A is 1. Don't have an X, so P is 0. And C is always just the number. So if A is 1, that's telling us, hey, we have a minimum. Remember, if that number was negative, that would mean it would be a maximum. Okay, so plugging it into our formula, I have the opposite of 0, which you can't do, so it's just 0 over 2 times 1. So that just equals 0. So again, we found the axis of symmetry and we found the first number of our coordinate. I'm going to plug that into my original equation. Type all of that into the calculator. And those are the coordinates of the vertex. Okay, let's talk about another part we need to learn for our slope-intercept form. Hopefully I get to erase all this stuff. And again, you could pause, rewind, all of that. I don't know why all of that's not coming off. So next we're going to find the y-intercept. And again, these are all terms that you have heard over and over and over again, just with different types of graphs. Okay, sorry I can't erase all of it, trying to, because I know it's bugging some people, including myself. So when we find the y-intercept, we are going to plug 0 in for x. Now there's also going to be kind of a shortcut that we'll talk about. All right, so just in going over this, instead of x, I plug 0 in. Type that into your calculator as you have it, and you'll learn that my answer is -6. Or you could write it 0, -6. I could have told you that when I looked at the problem, because right here, that c value is our y-intercept. So that's the shortcut. So, looking at number 4, you can either do it the 0 way, where you plug in 0. And if you type in your calculator, you would get 2. So my y-intercept is 2. All right, so now we're going to bring in some other terms that we haven't heard about in a little bit, but we did talk about in our very first unit. Increasing and decreasing. Remember, we are going to, use the x values for increasing and decreasing. Increasing, the graph goes up. Decreasing, the graph goes down. Then we're going to talk about our end behavior, and remember, those are the arrows. If it goes to the top of the screen, it's rising. If it goes to the bottom of the screen, it's falling. And then we have this weird thing called zeros, but now I have no zeros, 1 0, or 2 zeros. So we need to talk about that. So finding a lot of information here. So remember, zeros where a graph crosses the x-axis. Okay? And if there are no zeros, the graph doesn't cross the x-axis at all. If there are 2 zeros, the graph crosses it twice. And both of those dots are where our answers are. Now, 1 0 is something that we haven't talked about much, but we've seen this is where it kind of bounces off the x-axis. Okay. So we're going to take everything that we talked about and complete one full problem. So a lot of information here. First off, we have an x squared, an x, and a number. So that form is called standard form. Okay. So let's label our A, our B, and our C. A is -2. So that means if A is -2, I have a maximum, and it opens down. It looks like that. If that number was positive, it would open up. All right, now remember, we'll use the A and the B value for our formula here in a bit. But I'm just getting those because there's A, there's B, and and there's C. Remember that C value is our y-intercept. Okay, so we can't talk about the factored form, and we'll talk about the domain, range, and behavior, all that stuff once we graph it. But let's find our vertex. So x is going to equal the opposite of b, so -4, divided by 2 times -2. So we type that into our calculator, so that means x equals 1. So now take that and plug it into the original problem. Type that all in your calculator, every single part in one line, and you get -3. So I'm going to draw 1, -3. And then we said it's open and down, but another way to check it is our y-intercept is at -5. And draw flipped over u, because that's what you told me there. Okay, so number of zeros. Does it cross through this x-axis at all? No, so it's 0. Remember, for any u, the domain is -infinity, infinity. We'll come back to the range. But for our end behavior, the left arrow, they're both going down, so we write falling. So let's talk about increasing and decreasing. Increasing and decreasing is where we need the x values. All right, so that is -infinity. My x value there is 1. I'm sorry. And then it's infinity. So it's increasing first and then decreasing. That was the roller coaster one. It's been a little bit since we've seen it. Okay, now the range is different. The range is where we use the y value here. So it's a -3 with a down arrow. That means -infinity. Which comes first because it's smaller. All right, so that is our notes for today, or those are our notes. You have 2 problems for homework. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.